Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. Today we'll be talking about Landraiders, everything to do with Landraiders, both how to use them and how to take them on in combat. So, I'll be breaking this down into two broad categories. The first one will be what they can do, what you should be using them for, and the second thing will be how to do this. And I will break those categories as usual down into further smaller categories as we go, and I will integrate each section with an element on destroying Landraiders or taking them on effectively in combat. So, without much further ado, what can Landraiders do effectively? Well, the first thing that they can do is they can take objectives. They're really effective units for taking objectives, and that should be the primary thing you're using your Landraiders for. Whether you're keeping them back or getting them forwards, you should always be using your Landraiders to take objectives first and foremost. Now, another useful thing that is really should be high on your priorities is that they can protect OBSEC units. Now, that can be moving up the battlefield, ready to take a objective in the enemy lines or on the way to the enemy lines, or predominantly I like to have 10 TAC Marines sat in a Landraider on the back of my lines ready to take some multiple objectives, and I'll discuss that in further detail in a second. Another thing that they can do is that they can generally unleash hell, both with their weapons and with their contents. So at long range they can blast away. You want to be using las cannons and heavy bolters, and at close range, you know, you've got a couple of options there with the Landraider Crusader and the Landraider Redeemer. We'll be looking at those in more detail in a little bit. But yes, in general, they just unleash hell. Landraiders, they take objectives, they destroy stuff, they're excellent. So, let's have a look at Landraiders and how to do these things that we have just discussed. Well, the main principle with a Landraider, and if you take nothing away from this video, take this away, is the main principle for being successful with your Landraider is to keep your Landraider alive and basically unharmed until turn 3. Because at the point of turn 3, if you have played the game well, or even, you know, just held your ground, it should be at that point very difficult for your enemy to take on a Landraider with any long range firepower or any like heavy artillery, anything like that. It may still be under threat from, you know, assault from, you know, Thunderhammers, Power Fists, that kind of thing, but from turn 3 it should be very difficult to shift your Landraider because of the amount of reduced firepower an opponent would have. And that is absolutely key, because once you can't shift a Landraider, they are so useful. They are almost unstoppable. So, I will go into this. Before I look at anything else, I will go into how to keep your Landraider alive until turn 3. So, the principle is that in turn 1, you need your enemy to shoot at something else. You need some bait. And in turn 2, you need to be assaulting with other units and putting the pressure on with other units in your army. And now, as a Space Marine in general, and especially as a Blood Angel, you should always have some kind of assault going on turn 2, in my opinion, even as a shooty army, because a key principle of assault is that it forces your opponent to deal with those assaulting units, which really takes the pressure off your backlines, your objective taking units and that kind of thing. That's why as Blood Angels it's really key to always be aggressive and always keep that assault going on, because you're keeping the pressure on the opponent and allowing yourself to, you know, take objectives and that kind of thing in other areas of the battlefield. However, I digress. So, first turn, how do you bait your opponent? Well, if you have an assault Landraider or a shooty Landraider, the key thing is that with either type of Landraider you need some kind of fire support base. And part of that fire support base, if you've got a Landraider, I highly recommend having a Razorback that is a threat. Now, how can you make a mere Razorback a threat? Well, there's two ways to do this. Equip it with double las cannon, and 5 guys that can just run onto an objective or hop into another, run behind line of sight or hop into another transport, or otherwise be safe after their transport is blown up. Or you have a Razorback with dual assault cannons, and I'll explain why you use one of those two as your bait. Now if you have the dual last cannons, that is a quite easy target. It's the easiest target basically that your opponent has to target in first turn, whether they go first or second, that they can destroy and reduce significantly the amount of incoming heavy firepower from your side coming towards them. Because whether 2 last cannons are attached to a Predator or a Landraider or a Razorback, it's still effectively, apart from maybe, you know, Machine Spirit and that kind of thing, effectively the same amount of firepower, but on a much lighter and easier to handle package. So you want to bait them with that. So you want your Landraider in cover, and Landraiders are, if it's a shooting Landraider, you want to get it in cover if you can, or at least not as exposed as this, so that they target this unit, this Razorback, and you know they'll blow it up, but that's fine. Compensate for that. Take more last cannons elsewhere in your army. Compensate for that being destroyed, but they haven't targeted your last cannon first, your Landraider first turn, because they think, oh, I'm not going to blow it up. I can't target it with all my heavy weapons. You know, that corner of the field can't see it, or you know, it's in cover from 2/3 of my army. It's obscured from 2/3 of my army. It's got a towing cover. So, but that Razorback's easy to kill. I'll start with that. By the time they've blown the Razorback up, you know, it's still toughness 7, 3-up save with 10 wounds. They won't have enough firepower to even take your Landraider down to the point where it can't do damage. Probably. I mean, you know, some armies are different, but generally speaking, if we're talking all-comers armies, as a general principle, your Landraider at that point will be fine. If it's an assaulty Landraider, what I also recommend to have is your assault cannon Razorback, and you can use your assault cannon Razorback for either. But what you do is you place your assault cannon Razorback where it is directly in front of an objective in your lines. Because you're not going to use that Razorback to take an objective that the enemy has, unless you get really lucky and they decide not to target it and you get opportunistic. But what you want to do is you want to bait them to target that assault cannon Razorback, because a Razorback with dual assault cannon is really lethal when it gets up close, especially if it's got, you know, 5 TAC Marines inside. Oh, really scary, but you know that can take an objective or do something deadly to the enemy. So what you do is, whether you go for, you have it exposed, you have it on one flank, but you have it directly in line with an objective in your deployment zone, in your area of defence. You move it forward, they target it and destroy it, and you retreat your contents back. They won't really focus on the contents. They might do, and if so, so be it. But if they don't, you retreat your contents back and you use those to hold objectives in your rear lines. You're not assaulting with those contents. It's a red herring. But as you can see, either way, you have forced your opponent, or tempted your opponent, to deal with a unit that is a significant threat to them, but keeps your Landraider safe for turn 1, and undamaged, or as undamaged as possible. Turn 2, you assault. And the reason why you assault in turn 2 is because, as I said, that puts the pressure on the enemy. So again, they're at that point shooting their heavy weapons at your termies with storm shields, that kind of thing, and they're not targeting your Landraider in turn 2. And then it gets to turn 3, and whatever happens at that point, it will be very difficult for them to shift the Landraider, and then you can use the tactics, which I'm about to discuss, to take multiple objectives and really, you know, cause mayhem in the enemy lines. Okay, so let's move forward. So we've discussed our main principles, and just to remind you what we're going to be doing with our Landraiders: to take objectives, we'll be protecting OBSEC units, and we'll be unleashing hell on the enemy, because as Sun Tzu says, amidst chaos is opportunity. So we have 2 loadouts of Landraider effectively. Now there's many variations, or a couple of variations within these loadouts, I'm going to tell you basically two things you want to be doing and equipping your Land Raiders to do. So I'll be telling you the loadouts roughly, and then I'll be telling you how to complete your objectives effectively and make sure these Land Raiders just absolutely win games for you time after time. I will also at this point be telling you how to take on Land Raiders and how to stop them doing all these tactics, so that you, as an opponent of Land Raiders, can shut your enemy's tactics down and really stop them from causing chaos. Because a Land Raider, undamaged up to turn 3, is going to cause you real problems if you're taking one on. So there's two main types of raider in my eyes. There is the Assault Raider and the Support Raider. Now the Assault Raider will be one of two things. It will either be a Land Raider Crusader or a Land Raider Redeemer. And fully kitted out, every Land Raider costs, over 300 points basically. So they're a real investment, they're extremely expensive, and when you've got stuff inside them as well, that makes them even more expensive. And we'll be discussing as part of this what you want to be putting inside your Land Raiders, because you're paying for that transport capacity. Now, with your Assault Land Raiders, you want to be filling them up with two types of character, and then two sort of types of sort of other units, like troop units, so to speak. Now, the first thing I would say is don't put Terminators in a Land Raider. Terminators, classically go in a Land Raider, and I would say most of the time that is a great idea, but they take up so many slots that you really can't use them to keep OBSEC units in there alongside Terminators. And a really good thing about Land Raiders is they make OBSEC units really secure until the end of the game. So you want to have some OBSEC units in there, and you can't really fit Termies and OBSEC in at the same time. So I would go for other assault units. The other reason why, other assault units in your contents in an Assault Raider. The other reason why I would say that is because you may want to keep the contents of your Land Raider in the Land Raider for the majority of the game, because when they're in there, they are almost more of a threat, especially psychologically, to your opponent. He knows he's got that Land Raider in there. In his lines. He hasn't dealt with it, and he knows that at any point you can pull these contents out and just start, doing what you want, taking objectives, destroying his units more, putting the pressure on him. He has to keep investing points towards holding this Land Raider off after turn 3, because you've got it into his lines at sort of turn 2-3. So with the Assault Raider, what I would recommend for contents are a killy character or two, but I would recommend one really good killy character. That can be a captain just loaded out to kill. That can be, because he's got a little bit of a buff as well for units that pop out with him. But essentially this killy character may jump out on his own. He may not be a buffer unit, so Mephiston is a great character to jump out of a Land Raider. Because what you can do with him is you can hop him out to sort of pick on a target that opportunistically. Now you want some other assault units in there that are going to hop out opportunistically. Now if you've got a Crusader, you can fit 16 infantry models in there. And if you've got a Land Raider Redeemer, you can fit 12 in. Now I'd recommend 5 of those slots in either case being taken up by troops, because then they can hop onto an objective wherever you are in the late game. Even if the Land Raider gets picked off turn 4 or turn 5 or whatever, you've got 5 OBSEC troops. They're really, dangerous, because they can hold an objective that the enemy doesn't have OBSEC on, even if he's holding it with other units. So I would recommend taking 5 OBSEC troops, and that leaves you with a Land Raider Crusader 11 slots. So you can take a couple of characters in there, you can take a unit of veterans or something like that can really chop stuff up, or you can take a small unit of veterans that shoot stuff up like Stern Guard, and a small choppy unit of veterans as well. Now company veterans go really well in Land Raiders, because company veterans come as 2 guys with chainswords and bolt pistols, and the sergeant gets 3 attacks and the normal guy gets 2 attacks. So if you have 2 units of 2 in there, for around 50 odd points, around 53 points off the top of my head, you can have 2 units in there that are 2 men each, so they're only taking up 4 slots. And so you equip the sergeant, who's got 3 attacks, with a power weapon like a power sword or a power axe, and you leave the normal guy with a chainsword, so he's got 3 attacks. That's 6 attacks coming out of a 2-man unit. You have 2 of those in there, and they can pick off low-level characters. They can pick off weakened obset units that you've sprayed down with your hurricane bolters or your flamestorm cannons if you've got a redeemer, because it doesn't matter which one you're taking, using the same tactics effectively. It's an assault raider. So I'd recommend a couple of small opportunistic assault units that can hop out. I'd recommend either another bigger assault unit or another bigger shooter unit like Stern Guard that can spray stuff down, maybe with some special weapons in there, that can cause havoc. And I would recommend a unit of 5 TAC Marines that are going to sit in there until the last moment and take an objective when all the dust has settled. And then basically it's down to you when you get these units out. You can get them all out on a push, you can get them out here and there in little bits and bobs. It's up to you. Just be opportunistic, be tactical, just play to your overall game strategy, but as long as ultimately you clear an objective with those units and get those TAC Marines onto it, you have done your job, and whatever happens up to that point, it doesn't matter. That is up to you. Have fun, play around. That is the fun of using assault land raiders. You can just cause havoc, cause pandemonium, and then hop onto an objective in the last turn. Now, the one other thing I would say about assault raiders is that you want one buff unit in there, like maybe a chaplain or something like that. And in turn 1, you're going to move your assault raider up, and hopefully they will target something else and not destroy your assault raider, because you've put pressure on them with other units. Especially if you've got an assault raider, you're going to be pushing up with other stuff. You might even have a storm raven. Then turn 2, you're not going to jump your guys out. Definitely not turn 2. Whatever I've said about opportunistic attacks, don't jump out turn 2. Turn 2 is when you drop your screen down. Because the final thing I'll say on assault raiders is they are very, very, very vulnerable to things like power fists, dreadnought close combat weapons, thunder hammers, big punchy weapons like that other weapons that are equipped to other armies, like knobs with power claws and that kind of thing. Anything that's strength 8, so it's wounding you on 4s, and it's going to have an AP of -2, -3, something like that, is going to be causing you real grief. And also it means you're not shooting in the next turn if you've been assaulted. So you need to drop a screen down turn 2, and then hop a character out from your raider to support that screen. Buff it like a chaplain. That's how you can get a chaplain in effectively with a screen if he hasn't got a jump pack, nice and cheap, because you've got plenty of room. So, how to destroy or take on an assault raider? Well, you would think after all of this, I would say take on that assault raider turn 1, whatever you do, but that is not what I'm going to tell you. That assault raider turn 1 is not your main priority. Your main priority turn 1 is to set yourself up in the artillery duel in this game. If you are facing an opponent who has a land raider, they're going to be Imperium, so they're going to have some shooty units that are going to be relatively tough. More than likely. It's not a guarantee, but almost definitely. Now, that assault raider is putting pressure on you. That is undeniable. It's absolutely true. But you need to prepare to take it on turn 2 and take on the stuff that they're going to drop in to support it turn 2. You need to prepare for that. But turn 1 is not your main priority. Turn 1, they're going to be shooting at you with their other heavy weapons, their predators with las cannons, their dreadnoughts with las cannons, that kind of thing. And they'll probably target your long-range damaging units, and the kind of units that can take on a land raider, like maybe a dreadnought, a dreadnought equivalent or something like that. I'm not sure. Of all the variety of units, just a dreadnought equivalent unit, like you've got your marine equivalent, you've got your Termi equivalent, you've got your dread equivalent, something like that. So they'll target something like that, or your long range units. Now, you need to win that artillery duel. Whatever's going on in the game, you need to be keeping up with that artillery duel and not getting distracted from it. Because if you do, if you target that Land Raider first turn, you're not going to achieve that much. You may destroy it, you may well destroy it, but maybe he's got 500 points, maybe he's got a quarter of his units invested in that. If he's gone really all out, he's got his Land Raider and like 200 points plus stuck in that Land Raider, really gone all out, maybe even more with like multiple characters. Yes, that may be true, and it's just a beautiful opportunity, but nonetheless, you need to hold your nerve and fight that artillery duel and reduce their long range firepower, because then you can engage his assault raider in close combat and shoot it, weaken it down turn 2. You need to set yourself up turn 1 so that you can start dealing with it effectively turn 2. Turn 2, you need to have any close combat unit. It doesn't matter, if it's quite a valuable unit, it could even be your warlord. You need to be smiting the hell out of that Land Raider. You need to be targeting that Land Raider. You need to be preparing to, at close range, be able to rapid fire or shoot up and assault anything that comes in to support that Raider. There is a good likelihood that assault units will come in as a screen for that Land Raider. So I would highly recommend moving your units in such a way that you'll be able to strafe those units in with close range, effective firepower. And also being able to take on those units in assault. They'll have to deep strike 9 inches away from you and you can counter assault them. Or, being prepared to clear that chaff aside and then assault the Land Raider as soon as possible to stop it from shooting you. Every turn that you can assault it, you just need to be throwing units against it, even if it's one unit, a battered unit. Constantly have a unit against that, even if you've nothing that can destroy the Land Raider. Because it's an assault raider, it's in your lines, and vehicles, like any other vehicle, it can be locked. It's not super heavy, it can't just pull out and keep shooting, it's just a normal vehicle. So you need to run in, be throwing weak units against it every turn just to keep it locked in assault so it can't shoot. That would be my number one recommendation for taking assault raiders. Number one, win the artillery duel first turn, or at least tread water. Turn 2, soften it up a bit with long range firepower and then get back to the artillery duel at that point, and then be just hitting it, preparing to clear the support units that are going to inevitably come in, and being prepared to constantly lock that assault raider down with whatever units you have available, preferably very weak units that have been damaged through other means or other reasons. So that is the assault raider, that is how to use it, and that is how to take it on and stop it from destroying you. So what about the support raider? Now the support raider, for me, there's just one loadout to take, and that is very simply double last cannon sponsors on each side and a heavy bolter. That's all you need. Don't be spending more points. You can take a multi-melter, yes, but that just really makes it an absolute number one guaranteed target. Whilst it's just got dual last cannons and a heavy bolter, you can tempt them with other targets because it's not hauling world-ending firepower. It is, but that multi-melter I just find means that you can't tempt them with other things. So the main thing I'm going to discuss with this Land Raider is what to do with the troops inside, because ultimately it's very straightforward with this type of Land Raider. You keep it in the back, you shoot at their long range firepower, you blow stuff up. That's it. It's, you can move it if you need to, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's fine. Just keep it in cover. It's surprisingly easy to get one in cover after the FAQ. You just need a tow in cover to be obscured with line of sight blocking terrain, especially ITC kind of tournaments and that kind of thing. You will find it surprisingly easy to keep this Land Raider in cover. So blast away with your last cannons, use your heavy bolters to just strafe troops, help shoot Eldar skimmer vehicles and finish off the last wound, because with your mass heavy bolters, which is effective at that job. Be spraying away. The main thing you want to do is think about your placement with your Land Raider. With your Land Raider, you can move it and still shoot, obviously, because of power of the machine spirit. Now, just basically, the number one thing that you want to do is ensure that that Land Raider is within 2 objectives that are 9 inches away from it, because that way, or even a little bit further, but not, as long as you can get, because what you're going to do, as long as you can get units inside it to run in one turn to those objectives and take them convincingly. Now, you can place this Land Raider in a variety of ways. You can have it in the dead center, and if you've got 2 objectives in your deployment zone, you just make sure you're in a hop, skip and a jump. Maybe you might have to drop off a unit, turn 4, run one way, then move 12 inches, turn 5, drop off the other unit. But what you'll ideally do is place it so that turn 5 you can just go boop, 2 units out onto objectives. Now, a really useful thing to do with the Land Raider is to strafe up an objective for a snatch and grab. So say there's an objective in the midfield, and the opponents, your opponents, realistically they're going to have taken that objective turn 5. Well, what you can do is turn 4, move up to within a hop, skip and a jump from it with your tactical marines. You've got 10 tactical marines in there that are all obsec, of course, and then what you do is you shoot 4 last cannons and a heavy bolter turn 5 at that objective, because it doesn't matter what's on that objective. It doesn't matter if it's guardsmen. You'll kill 7 guardsmen. Do you know what I mean? Just kill them. Great. Get them dead. It's fine. Then run your 10 obsec guys on there. You've taken an objective. If they've got 15 guardsmen on there, you can take it with your 10. If they've got 15 Eldar Guardians, 15 zombies, it doesn't matter. Strafe them up with the Land Raider. Run your 10 obsec on there. It's yours. Job's a good one. If you have to charge in, great, especially as Blood Angels, but it doesn't matter what's on there. Your Space Marines, your Toughness 4, your Strength 4, you've got a 3 up, armor save, you'll be fine in the last turn of the game, especially if a Land Raider's just opened up. And they won't be expecting that. They won't be expecting your Land Raider to shoot at troops and that kind of thing. That's the last thing they'll expect. But turn 5, it doesn't really matter. The artillery duel's over at that point. It just doesn't matter. So just open up, steal an objective, a nice snatch and grab. So that's what you do with your support raider. You stay, linger, in cover, blasting away. Hopefully from the start, near to objectives, but if not, within a hop skip, a movement turn 4. Move turn 4 onto an objective. If you can, run 2 tactical marine squads out in opposite directions, take 2 other objectives. 1 Land Raider can hold all your backlines. You don't need anything back apart from, your 1 Rhino full of reserves that you're going to use to snatch and grab another objective late game. But effectively, with a Rhino with some snatch and grab units in there, as a turn 5 reserve unit, and a Land Raider with 10 tactical marines in there, you can control all of your backlines and effectively snatch and grab 2 midfield objectives turn 4 to 5 and hold on to them until 6 and even turn 7 with all those obset units. The one caveat I would say to always taking 10 tactical marines is if you really are consistently going to do a snatch and grab instead of just backline control and running 2 5-man tac squads onto objectives last turn. If you really are going to use your support raider for the snatch and grab tactic every game, you like that tactic, it works for you, and it is an effective one, then I would recommend potentially taking 5 devastators in there instead, or running, excuse me one second, or as units die, if you only put, say, 5 men in there, 5 tac marines, if you're trying to save points, or for whatever reason you don't need to fill it up, and you've got your Land Raider and it's not full of units at the start of the game, then it's a great safe house for units that get battered over the course of the game. You'll have multiple infantry units that you can run back into this Land Raider and keep them safe, and that goes for the Assault Raider too. That goes for the Assault Raider too. You know, you can always hop units back into it. And it's toughness 8, it's got loads of wounds, 16 wounds, you know, armor 2 up, you're laughing. So, if you are going to go for that snatch and grab, put some good units in there over the course of the game, ready for a snatch and grab, move up turn 4 and 5, or have some Devastators in there, keep them safe in there all game, and just have 2 to 3 heavy bolts on those Devastators. So turn 4, they can hop out, and then you've got, with the 2 heavy bolters on the Land Raider, and the 2 to 3 heavy bolters, you know, you've got potentially 15 strength 5 AP -1 shot shooting at an objective that you're going to steal. So that is just an absolutely lethal combo. 5 devs, but with only 3 heavy bolters, because you don't have to take all heavy bolters, and your Land Raider with his 2 heavy bolters, strafe an objective, move up turn 4, hop on turn 5, snatch and grab. That's your objective. So, how to stop a support raider? Well, effectively, just start shooting him turn 1 or turn 2 at the latest. I'm not going to say it's actually a bad idea to shoot the bait Razorback or shoot a bait unit if you can reliably reduce the opponent who's got this Land Raider. If you can reduce their long range firepower effectively and quickly and reliably, then go for it. You know, as I've said, fight that artillery duel, win that artillery duel turn 1, you know, or at least tread water, you know, make a significant impact. So if they've got a Razorback or a Predator with double last cannon that you can definitely blow up, do it. 100% do it. Ignore the Land Raider turn 1 again. But turn 2, you have to be shooting at that Land Raider, and you have to hold your nerve. If you don't start shooting it at turn 1, which is a good idea if there's no guaranteed destroy long support units that you can target, then start targeting it turn 1. But hold your nerve if you don't destroy it. But it's easier if you don't target it turn 1. If you start targeting it turn 1, you don't destroy it, you know, fair enough, you'll get it for turn 2, you're not going to worry. But if you start targeting it turn 2 and shooting at it and you don't destroy it, you may panic. Don't. Keep focusing on it, because when you destroy it, you will have removed 4 last cannons and 2 heavy bolts from the game, and you'll have wrecked their plans, and you'll have kept your mid ground safe. When you destroy that Land Raider, you're effectively helping secure the mid to rear of the whole battlefield. That Land Raider can help cover and have board control for up to 2/3 of the battlefield effectively. You know, in a couple of turns they can turn the tide of the game in any, you know, part of about 2/3 of the battlefield. They can move fast enough and just start wrecking stuff wherever they want, and they've got long range firepower. So as soon as you take it down, you've stopped that. So you need to start focusing on it. Ideally turn 1, but if you've got an easy target, take that. Turn 2, hit the Land Raider, finish at turn 3. If you don't finish at turn 3, hold your nerve, finish at turn 4. As soon as it's gone, you've saved yourself a massive nightmare turn 5, I absolutely guarantee you. So, that is how to use a Land Raider and how to take a Land Raider on in full. Take those objectives, mix up lots of mini units in there if you're going for assault. Individual combat characters that don't even give buffs are great. Mephiston is awesome if you're Blood Angels. Don't bother with Termies. Make sure you've got a minimum of 5 TAC Marines in there. Anything else is up to you. This has been the Schola Progenium. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.